Update. Good morning to you, Mayor. How are you?
I'm fine, Mel. How are you?
Good. I know you were delivering the news yesterday that a lot of people were hoping wasn't going to happen, but looking at realistically, when we look at gathering numbers, when we follow the track of COVID-19, it seemed like the only route to cancel or change up, I should say, some of these traditions. So let's talk a little bit about that and how you're feeling in delivering some of that news.
Well, I'm sort of numb to it now because I've been sort of the one responsible for conveying the news about all kinds of events from Pride through Caribbean Carnival and so on. And so now it's really just a logical extension of that, which with the numbers going the wrong way on case counts, things like whether it's the Greek Ohi parade or whether it's the Santa Claus parade or whether it's our own New Year's Eve celebrations at Nathan Phillips Square or the lighting, Christmas tree lighting event that we always have that's a big hit. What those are is crowd scenes. People gathered together along the sidewalk, shoulder to shoulder, even though it's outside, or people gathered together shoulder to shoulder at Nathan Phillips Square for these wonderful fireworks you're seeing now. We just can't sustain having those events as a threat to public health. And I will say, in many cases, including the Santa Claus Parade, it's the organizers themselves who call us. And because they can't be sure of what circumstances will exist on the day of, say, the parade, they'll say it's better off for them to convert it or postpone it or cancel it because they have to sign contracts and hire people and do things. So in the case of the Santa Claus Parade, I'm assuring people, because I don't want parents saying, well, that terrible man, John Tory, the mayor, who canceled Santa Claus is not coming this year. I've had enough bad news to convey. So they have said to us, we just shouldn't put this on. And they are moving, for example, to some kind of a virtual event they'll outline more details about. But it's sad, but it's just part of one more sacrifice we all have to make to try and get the city back to good health and avoid, loss of life and loss of health.
Indeed. When we talk about health, it's important to look at the economic health as well. So no doubt some of these local events will hit some of the small businesses, won't they?
Yeah, and look, that's one of the reasons why I've been so vocal as well in saying, and the federal government did respond yesterday to give them their due. In the throne speech, they indicated a lot of these programs to help business, the wage subsidy and so on, would be continued for some period of time. And that was very much necessary. We're still waiting to hear from them about the rent program that really is needed very much by restaurants in particular. But having said that, they've taken a lot of measures and extended them that are going to be necessary because businesses are being hard hit. Every time you hear me cancel an event or every time you hear different kinds of restrictions being put on, it has an impact on smaller businesses especially, and they've been struggling for months and will continue to struggle. So they need help from our governments, and they're getting it from all of us, but they're going to need a really intensive effort to keep them alive, let alone to make them healthy.
Mayor, with the throne speech, you rhymed off a couple of things here that you were looking for, that you're looking forward to moving ahead with. Were there any misses here as the mayor of Toronto when you watched that throne speech that you thought maybe should have been addressed?
Well, I just think the one thing that's going to be most crucial for us is the continuation of those business assistance programs. But then the one that I want to see us accelerate our efforts on, and I didn't have the sense of the urgency, yet attached to this, but I'm told by some of the ministers I talked to and so on that it will be there, which is addressing homelessness and addressing some of our housing opportunities. When I say housing opportunities, Mel, one of the things they have created is they created a fund that would let us buy some hotels and buildings. And you may say, well, why would we buy them? Well, the business case actually says that if we buy, say, a hotel right now when hotels might be for sale because they're not doing well because of the lack of tourists and so on, we could actually on a more cost-effective basis provide permanent housing quickly for people who need help, especially people who need supportive housing. We could have the building and we could convert it, in a very quick basis and save money because we're spending millions of dollars now renting hotel rooms to shelter these people. So I hope some of those programs are rolled out with a even greater sense of urgency, but I do commend the government for the fact those programs exist. And we're just now talking about timing and quantum to make sure they can be as big as possible, as quickly as possible, so we can move to end homelessness, quite frankly, but to shelter vulnerable people in a very cost-effective and humane way.
One of the bigger conversations we've been having is the idea around enforcement. We saw the reaction, swift movement from Toronto police breaking up that one party that I think it was 50 attendees somewhere in Scarborough, and a number of fines were handed out. Do we anticipate to see more of this? And do you have any updated numbers on how many fines are being handed out by people not adhering to these COVID rules?
Well, the answer is more than there should be. I mean, the ideal answer would be 0 fines. I would love it if nobody gave a ticket. But the fact is that when people have these parties, and this one in particular that was raided in Scarborough had dozens and dozens of people beyond the limit, I'm told. And, those are people that just don't get it. I mean, we've been very clear in saying that these kinds of parties represent a big opportunity to spread this virus, perhaps unknowingly. The police make their own decisions about how to enforce the law, as do the bylaw people. But I've certainly indicated from my part as mayor, and I don't direct them, but I can give my opinions. It's time to stop with the education, stop with the warnings, and get on with the tickets, just because it is so important that these kinds of parties and other kinds of things not be held, because it's just putting people at risk. And so, I say to people, let's do it for our grandmothers and grandfathers. Let's do it for our parents. Let's do it for the kids who are in school who have to be kept healthy. If we don't want to do it for ourselves and because it's law abiding, do it for all those other groups that need to be kept healthy and get the city back on its feet. When you talk about the restaurants and bars, the best thing that could happen to them is for people to obey all the rules, so that sooner than later we would have the pandemic over with and everybody could get back to regular business. That's the best thing that could happen.
Very quickly for you, because we have run out of time, you have alluded to the fact that we might see some changes for bars, restaurants, maybe closing sooner, changing some of the regulations there. Could that happen very soon?
Yes, I think it could, and I think it should. I mean, again, I'm not a killjoy. Everybody says, "Oh, here's this guy; he's canceling events," and does this guy have no end of things he could do that make people sad? The fact is that my dad used to say, "Nothing good happens after midnight," and I think after midnight, when people are having a few drinks, and I have nothing against that, that's when your inhibitions go down. You take your mask off, you stand closer to other people than you should. Maybe the owners of the bars pay a little less attention to the rules at that time, and so I've advocated, and it's up to the province to decide if they want to. Maybe just cut the time of opening back a little bit, so that last call would say come at a time like midnight, which is still, not too bad. And a lot of other places have done this as a means, not the answer, but it's just one more thing we can do to cut down on the spread. And I say the same about weddings. Again, I'm not against weddings. My son postponed his wedding a year. My niece is scrambling to have a wedding for 50 people on New Year's Eve, and the families don't even get covered by the 50 people. So we're affected in our family too. But these are places now where you can have a couple hundred people having a good time. And that's great, except that when they have a good time, they're close together, they're talking loud, there's music going on, and the virus spreads. So we've just got to address some of these things and be straight up about it, on the basis that it's better to do it now and pay a price now than it is to pay a much bigger price later. That's my own opinion.
Okay. Mayor Tory, as always, we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
7:44. Sorry. We went a little bit over, Frankie. I'm sorry.